ZipRecruiter, I don't know if any of y'all have ever heard about it, so I'm just going to read it to you. It's a must-have. With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. So you can rest easy knowing your job is being seen by the right candidates, okay? ZipRecruiter puts its smart matching technology to work, actively notifying qualified candidates about your job within minutes of posting so you receive the best possible matches. That's why our ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you. It finds them. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. One more time to try for free to go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. It's something you need to know. Because right now my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A.
Guys, wouldn't your wife or girlfriend love it if you treated her to the very best this Christmas? Now you can, with the world's softest pajamas by Pajamagram. Created by a team of pajama experts, the world's softest PJs are lighter than a cloud, softer than a bunny, like cashmere, only better. She'll love how heavenly they feel. Includes free gift packaging and Christmas delivery is guaranteed. So visit Pajamagram.com or call 1-800-GIVE-PJs.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday to one and all. It's the 8th day of December 2017. Dan Graca filling in for my man Stephen A. here on ESPN Radio once again. 866-SAY-ESPN is the telephone number, 866-729-3776. With you for the next couple of hours here. You could tweet at me, as always, at Dan Graca, Graca. We join a little bit later on in the program, as we do each and every Friday, by our man R.J. Bell. Go over some of the lines for a Week 14 in the National Football League. A Week 14 that got underway last night with a pretty important NFC South showdown. And I got to tell you, it was really unlike a lot of the Thursday night football that we've seen this year because, as you and I both know, the Thursday night football product is generally not good. Last night was entertaining. You got to give it that, right? It kept you in your seats until the very end. Little screwy, little crazy. I mean, at times, poor execution, but all in all, it added up to a pretty entertaining game. And the Atlanta Falcons can live to breathe for another week, at least in terms of their hopes of maybe winning the NFC South. And what was so rare about that game, you had two quarterbacks in Drew Brees and Matt Ryan, who, let's be honest, right, in a quarterback world, which we live in right now in the National Football League, you need a quarterback if you want to have any shot. And these two guys over the last decade have been upper level, upper echelon in the National Football League. Drew Brees is going to Canton, Ohio, right? He's a Super Bowl champion, a Super Bowl MVP. Matt Ryan has put together a pretty darn good career. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer yet. He's still got a lot more work to do. But both of those guys made some head-scratching decisions with the football last night that very easily could have cost their team the game. I mean, Matt Ryan threw a couple of balls up for grabs, and he got picked off 3 times on the night. And you say to yourself, what is he looking at? Especially the one at the end of the first half in the end zone when he just floated one up to Julio Jones there in the corner. And look, I know Julio Jones is a beast. And more often than not, if you throw something up to him, he's going to at least make an honest stab to go get it. But where was he throwing that? And rightfully so, it got intercepted. It cost Atlanta some points. And then Drew Brees at the end of the game trying to make a play. I get it. But that's one you can't force in there, especially when you're in chippy field goal range and all you need is 3 points to extend the game and get yourself to overtime. Throw in the fact you had some just head-scratching decisions by a couple of the coaches. You know, Sean Payton really just giving up any chance that his team had of maybe getting the football back there after the Brees interception, basically walking out to midfield, and he got a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, and that was all she wrote for the Saints. You got Dan Quinn on that final drive there by the New Orleans Saints when New Orleans had a 3rd and 1 and were called for a holding penalty, which would have made it 3rd and 11 and backed them up 10 more yards, maybe making a field goal a little bit more challenging. You have Dan Quinn declining the penalty. Nah, that's good. You know what? That's all right. We don't need the 10 yards. That's cool. Nah, we're good. All right, fine. You then move it to 4th down, but it was 4th and 1. It's not like it was 4th and 7, 4th and 8. 4th and 1, that's pretty manageable. And the Saints went ahead and they converted. Drew Brees got the QB sneak, and that was all she wrote. But as you know, they didn't get a chance, and he got a little bit of a stay of execution there because of the INT in the end zone. So a very, very weird game. And I saw a stat this morning, courtesy of the great Gil Brandt, which I think you'll find interesting. You know, you preach ball security and you preach minimizing turnovers and that sort of thing. And look, any day of the week, that's what you want to see from your quarterback. But Matt Ryan, against all odds, is 2-0 this season in games where he throws 3 interceptions. Think about that for a second. He's 2-0, and he's been picked off 3 times in each of the games. Meantime, if you look around the rest of the National Football League this year, quarterbacks that throw 3 or more INTs in a game, you know what their record is combined? 0-20. Go figure that out. That's why you play the games. But a big win for the Falcons. They moved to 8-5. Saints are now 9-4, and all of a sudden, the Falcons got 3 games left, and even though they have been less than a well-oiled machine so far this year, they're only a game out of first place. And they still got the Saints one more time in a couple of weeks in New Orleans. If they go down there on Christmas Eve and beat the Saints, guess what? We're talking about a whole new division. It opens things up a little bit, too, for the Carolina Panthers. Did that loss last night. Now Carolina, who's got a very difficult game this week, of course, against the Vikings, coming into their stadium, they win that game, and all of a sudden they're tied for first, even though New Orleans has the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Panthers. A Falcon loss last night would have finished them in terms of being able to win the NFC South. Saints failed at the opportunity. They had a chance. But, you know, I began talking about Thursday Night Football and the product that it is. And I don't know about you. Look, I'll say this right now. Nobody growing up loves football more than me. Nobody loves it. I mean, eat it up. Any game. I don't care. You can put the worst teams in the league playing a football game. I'll watch it. But over time, it began to be a little much. And Thursday Night Football, case in point, leading the charge. And it's not even so much it's too much. Thursday Night Football, by all accounts, is just not a good product. You know, last night was a good game. Okay? Last night, and that was the exception. You maybe had like a couple this year. But since they've gone back into having Thursday Night Football every single week, it's generally been bad. It's generally been lopsided. It puts those teams at a disadvantage. And that's why, remember, we spent a lot of time yesterday talking about Roger Goodell and him getting that lucrative new contract extension to be the shepherd of the National Football League for years to come. You can't preach player safety, and you can't preach wanting to keep these guys upright and making sure that they're healthy and they don't sustain any head injuries and it doesn't affect their quality of life post-football, and then have these guys turn around on short rest without full recovery and play a game on Thursday night. It's not fair, right? It's a complete and utter contradiction. And I'm not the only one saying this. I mean, go ask any player, go ask any coach in the National Football League. They'll tell you exactly the same thing. They don't think it's right. They don't think it's fair. That game last night was a war of attrition. Look at what happened to the New Orleans Saints. They lost 6 guys due to injury, including Alvin Kamara, who might win Rookie of the Year this season, and who's as diverse and lethal a weapon out of the backfield as you have right now in the National Football League, and has been a very, very good 1-2 punch with Mark Ingram really helping Drew Brees in that offense. Kamara missed basically the entire game last night. Do you think that had something to do with the fact that the Saints really couldn't sustain anything offensively and maybe didn't put up as many points as they should have? That's a big loss. But there were 5 of his teammates who also went down in the game. Drew Brees, who, hey, been around the block, right? Spent a lot of time in this league. He's a veteran. He gets it. Drew Brees last night after the game in his locker spoke up about that very subject and Thursday Night Football and the toll that it takes on each and every guy who steps out on that field. And I remember watching that play as it happened. You know, you saw something wasn't right upon impact with Kamara. And then when you saw the replay, you saw helmet to helmet, bang. He was done. He was seeing the cobwebs. Listen to what Drew Brees had to say after the game.
100% of product to play on Thursday night. Do you understand what guys' bodies go through, you know, in a game, and then to have to turn around 4 days later and to play? I mean, look at the injury studies. They're off the charts. They're off the charts. So is this smart? as it pertains to guys' health and safety? No, absolutely not.
There you go. I mean, he's not wrong. You know, you talk to any player, current, former, you name it. All right? And I know that a lot of former players, certainly here, we have a lot of them at ESPN who are part of our team, now as analysts. They've said it many times. You know, talk to guys who are still playing in the league. If you play on Sundays, they'll tell you that it takes until the following Sunday before you're even starting to feel close to 100% if you can even get back to that level. Okay, one whole week. And remember, the league has allowed these teams and almost instructed these teams to take their foot off the gas a little bit when it comes to practice, when it comes to collisions, when it comes to contact. Remember, teams don't practice in pads as much as they used to. Forget about training camp. Training camp is basically Club Med. It's not getting you ready for the season. Why do you think so many of these guys are getting injured? Because they're not accustomed to it, because they're not accustomed to contact, and most of them don't even play in the preseason anymore. So if you're asking these teams and these players to turn around sometimes 2-3 days after you last played a game, you think that's responsible? Do you think that promotes healing? Do you think that promotes recovery? Do you think that that promotes keeping your players safe, keeping your investment, your product, able to function at its capacity? Because after all, and maybe I'm missing something, you could tell me differently, without the players, without those guys in the helmets, in pads, on the field, you tell me, what is the National Football League? Without the superstars, what is it? All right, you want to go get some scabs? You want to just go get guys off the street, put them in helmets, put them in pads, and watch them on Sundays? No thanks. These are the best athletes in the world, and you want them out there on a week-in, week-out basis. Now, to talk about the competitive disadvantage it does for some of these teams, think about the road team who has to play on Thursday Night Football, right? They play a game on Sunday. Sunday night, the coaches don't even go home. Most of them go right back to the facility. They start breaking down the tape of the game that they just played. They start already looking at stuff for the next opponent coming up on Thursday. Players come in on Monday. They'll do a nice little walkthrough, get the game plan. Maybe they have one legit day of practice on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, they're hopping on a plane and flying to wherever they got to travel to for the Thursday night game. How is that conducive to being able to have a fair and competitive advantage to go win a football game? Really? I mean, if you're a road team, you might as well throw your hands up in the air and say, all right, I guess we're just expecting a loss here. Thanks, NFL. Thanks a lot. Needs to get straightened out. It really does on so many levels. But you know what that Thursday Night Football package brings in terms of revenue, in terms of TV money? Think about it. That's all you need to know. The color of the field is green, and green is the only thing that matters because that's what's coming in with this package. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. I want to hear from you about Thursday Night Football. Is it too much? Is it something you get geeked up for each and every Thursday? And what do you think if it's your team that, unfortunately, loses a player in this type of situation? We got a busy show. We'll go all through the Week 14 Sunday matchups in the National Football League. We'll talk to our buddy RJ Bell, go through the lines as well. The Giancarlo Stanton sweepstakes now appear to be down to 4 teams, if you believe the reports. And it turns out the 2 teams that he met with and who have already worked out a deal with the Marlins aren't on that list. That thing is going to drag on, it seems like, forever, and there's no end in sight. We'll come back, though. We'll get it started with you at 866-729-3776. It's Dan Graca in for Stephen A. here on ESPN Radio.
Want to be a part of the show? It's Stephen A. Up weekdays from 1 to 3 Eastern at 866-729-3776.
Computer, execute 12.4p operation.
Optimizing algorithm. Running encryption packet alpha. Night. Oh, I don't feel so good.
What is it, computer?
Is it hot in here? It feels hot in here. I feel a little clammy. I should lie down or something.
A computer with a virus? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Those oysters Rockefeller were a mistake.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Dan Graca in for Stephen A. on a busy Sports Friday here on ESPN Radio. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Only 1 week away and counting, too. And I'm not just saying this to be a company guy. I mean it because it's of genuine interest. 1 week away until the release of Star Wars The Last Jedi. I only bring that up because we were talking about that during the break. I am geeked up for it, and I know a lot of you are. But I'm not one of those guys that needs to go to the movies or will go to the movie like the day it comes out. I like my space. I don't like sitting in a jam-packed, crowded theater where there's like 500 million other people in there and you're like on top of one another. I like to space out. So I'm going to give it a few days and maybe go to a show like very early in the morning where I know it's not going to be as crowded. That's how I like to roll. But I can't wait to see the movie. Cannot wait. All in. All right, let's see what you guys think. Talking Thursday Night Football, the NFL schedule. We will start it off today with Jaden, who's on ESPN Radio. Jaden, how are you?
Pretty good, and yourself, man?
What's up, Jaden?
Oh, nothing much. Watching that New Orleans Saints game last night, and, I mean, the Saints' defense is what they started out perfect, but, man, when it got to that second half, I mean, they were just gassed.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw Marshawn Lattimore getting oxygen. I mean, he was just running up and down the field, guarding Julio almost every play. And Thursday Night Football, the Saints lost, 6 or 7 players last night? You got a few on most of them are on offense, I believe, right? If I remember right.
Yeah, 6 guys in total, yep.
I mean, also what killed the Saints the game in terms of this, they lost players due to injury. Alvin Kamara lost in the first quarter of the game? He got hit with a helmet-to-helmet contact concussion.
Yep.
To me, Thursday Night Football shouldn't even be a thing. It should stay to Sunday to Sunday. But the last-second interception from Drew Brees, I mean, that was on him. It wasn't because he was gassed. It was because, I mean, it was just a bad play. I think Kobe Fleener he was throwing it to, or Josh Hill.
Yeah, it was Josh Hill. And look, you're right, Jaden, thank you for the phone call. As I said, Matt Ryan and Drew Brees, it seemed like they were trying to outdo one another in terms of who could throw worse interceptions, right? I mean, that's what it came down to. And here's the bottom line. All right, when I think about the NFL, and I think back to my formative years, where I developed a love affair for this game, just like many of you did, there was something special about Sunday at 1, right? There was something really, really special. You couldn't, when I was a kid in school, my God, all I thought about all week, from September through December, was Sunday at 1 o'clock. Can't wait for that weekend. Can't wait for the games to kick off. Cannot wait. I didn't have to be bothered with Thursday night football, right? It made the wait that much more special when you only had games on Sunday. Yeah, there was Monday night football, and that was a big deal, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But, the Sunday games, it was great. Now, because you have Thursday night football, and again, you can choose to watch or not watch. That's your prerogative. But to me, it is a little bit much. And remember Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, a couple of years ago. Remember he made those comments about the NFL that maybe they were getting a little bit too big for their britches. Remember that? That maybe they're kind of like over-insaturating the market with too much NFL and too much might not be a good thing. I think he was right. It was almost prophetic. And you're starting to see some of that. Because now when I see football on Thursday, I'm like, boy, I just got done digesting the past week. I'm good till Sunday, man. I'm good. Like, I don't need another game. Last night when I got home, did the radio show, then went and did my TV thing. And, when I got home, I was a little tired. And I'm like, oh, let me get some dinner. And I sit on the couch. I'm like, oh, all right, there's a game on, but I don't really need a game. I'm good till Sunday. I'm cool. Recharge the batteries a little bit. Now, when Sunday comes around, all right, I'm there at 1 o'clock, but it seems like there's so much happening now then that even now sometimes by 4 o'clock, I'm completely wiped. And I'm like, all right, that's a lot of football between Thursday and all the 1 o'clock games. Now I got to sit through the 4 o'clock games too? Oh, and there's still a Sunday night game? And here's the biggest problem I have with Sunday night football while we're on the subject, all right? Sunday night football. They build that up to be the biggest game of the week, the best matchup of the week, right? That's what they do. Remember, they could flex in and out of the games. They want to give you a good and an entertaining game. Sunday night football is the place to be. if you're like me, once that Sunday night game rolls around at 8:30, I'm kind of footballed out. I got to be honest with you. I'm footballed out. You know, I can't sit on the couch and watch football for 8-9 hours, maybe like I used to when I was younger. There's other stuff going on. So if that is the game that I've been told all week that I can ill afford to miss, why are we needing it on Sunday night after we sat through football all day? So my point is that game, the game of the week, should be on Monday night. It should be a standalone game, and that's what made Monday Night Football so special for decades, right? Your biggest game, your best game should be by itself on Monday. You watch all your football on Sundays, and then you say, all right, hey, now we still got that Monday night game. Oh, we got Saints-Falcons, or we got Ravens-Steelers coming up on Monday night. Oh, I can't wait for that one. All by itself. You had a day to maybe let the football digest a little bit, to calm down. That's where they have it all wrong. That's where it could be even better. And it won't feel like it's too much information overload. But the NFL doesn't want to hear from me. You know, the NFL hasn't called me, right? They haven't called me. They said, let me pick Graca's brain. You know, he seems to have things figured out. Let me see what he thinks about how we should be giving these games. I'm here for you guys. I know Goodell just signed the big extension and everything. Raj, if you want to talk, I'm here. Have your people call my people. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. More football calls coming up, and some breaking news involving the Yankees and their general manager. We'll get into that. It's Dan Graca in for Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Dan Graca in for Stephen A. here on ESPN Radio. 866-ESPN's the telephone number, 866-729-3776. I mentioned some news breaking about the New York Yankees and general manager Brian Cashman. According to Bob Nightingale of USA Today, Cashman and the Yankees, 5-year contract extension, $25 million. All reportedly. Once it becomes official, we'll let you know. But, hey, any little surprise there, considering the Yankees have basically turned over the keys of the castle to Cash? And that's why Joe Girardi's no longer managing the team and Aaron Boone is. I guarantee you, Cashman's probably making more than Aaron Boone is, right? Boone only got a 3-year contract. I don't think he's getting paid $5 million a year. So Cash is the guy who's wielding the magic wand in that organization now, in case you had any sort of doubt whatsoever, despite the fact what they're going to say. By the way, anybody who really is geeked up about Thursday Night Football, like our esteemed producer, John Winthrop, set your calendar, set your clocks for next Thursday night in Week 15, because you do not want to miss the doozy that the NFL is going to give us then. The currently last place 3-9 Denver Broncos travel to the last place Indianapolis Colts in an interdivision AFC showdown where both teams are 3-9. So make sure you get all your Christmas shopping, your holiday shopping done. Make sure you put the kids to bed, and you can sit down next Thursday and enjoy yourself some Thursday Night Football. That is not to be missed. Oh, my goodness. Jacoby Brissett against whichever quarterback the Broncos decide to start next week. That is must-see TV if I've ever seen it. Brian in California is next. Brian, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself? Thanks
good, Brian. What's going on?
I wanted to make a point about what you said about Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of pointless in some sense. 3 days is not nearly enough time to get healthy, enough to go out there and play hard again, give it your 100% effort. Time and time again, you see these players get hurt on Thursday night, and that's because they didn't have enough time to recover.
Absolutely. And that's what the NFL, the NFL puts such a huge emphasis and priority on player safety, right? You see the way the rules have changed. You know, the game is not as physical as it used to be. You know, there's certain things you can't do when it comes to contact. Well, if you're going to prioritize safety, and look, I'm all for that. I am. All right, I don't want these guys' lives to be ruined, but we saw the other night, for example, in Cincinnati, and the unfortunate play with Ryan Shazier. You know, we don't want any of that stuff to happen. We want these guys to be able to walk off the field. But if you're going to say that, you then can't go ahead and then throw these guys out there, 72 hours after they last played a game. That's not fair.
Exactly. And I mean, if you're going to give them Thursday night football, at least give it to the teams that come off of a bye week. At least they have enough time to prepare, and they have enough time to rest their bodies, get the proper treatment that they needed.
And I'm all for that, Brian, and a good phone call. You know what the NFL should do? Let's be honest. They should add another week to the season. And what I mean by that is not add another game. I think it's great at 16. All right, I don't need any more games. I don't want more playoff teams. I don't want more games. 16 games, 6 playoff teams in each conference. That is it. It's supposed to be hard to make the playoffs. It shouldn't be like the NBA or the NHL where like half the league gets in. It shouldn't be like that. It should be exclusive. My point is this. You add another week to the season. All right, make it 18 weeks. Everybody still plays 16 games, but now you get 2 buys. And I'm remembering back to... For some reason, it was just kind of like a one-off thing. 1993. I'll never forget. That was 18 weeks, and each team had 2 buys. Why can't we go back to that now? I mean, you're not going to sit here and actually tell me and try to convince me, well, that would make the season too long. I mean, the Super Bowl's already played in February. What's the difference? And if you remember, the NFL used to begin the regular season Labor Day weekend, but then they moved away from that because Labor Day weekend, it's still like the last hurrah from the summer. A lot of the stadiums had empty seats and so on and so forth. And, maybe there wasn't as much interest there as there normally would be, so they decided to push it back a week. You could even still start the regular season now. Play the Super Bowl a week later. You think anybody's going to care? If you even extend it to President's Day weekend, and then everybody's going to get off the day after the Super Bowl for the holiday. Super Bowl's like a national holiday anyways. What would be so wrong in that? You're giving these teams more rest. You're giving them more time to recover. That's not the worst scenario. And by the way, you want to get into empty seats and you want to get into the viability of Thursday Night Football? Explain this to me. Okay? Explain this. Did you watch the game last night? And that's a brand new stadium down there in Atlanta. Mercedes-Benz Dome or whatever the heck they call it. Concession prices are lower than any other major stadium in the United States. You go there and get a hot dog for $1.50. It's incredibly cheap. Arthur Blank did a phenomenal job with that stuff. But did you see all the empty seats in that stadium last night? Think about this. This is December. December football. 2 division rivals, Falcons, Saints. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that for those 2 teams. A rivalry game, playoff spots, division championships on the line. And you could have showed up there last night and had your own row. Forget about your own seat, your own row. There was thousands of empty seats. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? That the fans can't even come out to watch a game on Thursday nights, much less sit down and commit to it for 3.5 hours on television. That wasn't, again, Falcons Jaguars. That was Falcons Saints. Their biggest rival. That's an issue. Bill in Queens, you're on ESPN Radio. Bill, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for taking my call.
What's up, Bill?
I think it's two different issues. One, like you're saying about, is the market too saturated? The stands are empty. I think in general, even some Sunday games, you're seeing a downgrade in attendance. But in terms of the players and saying, it's too quick to turn around, number one, every team has to do this. So everybody's on the same playing field. Nobody has 10 games where they have a 3-day turnaround. Do you know how many jobs there are in the world where guys are working 7 days a week, 12-hour days, and they don't get days off? These guys are professional athletes. Absolutely. It's very difficult. I'm not in any shape to be a professional athlete, but I don't exactly feel bad for them. They're getting paid a lot of money to do it once, maybe twice with the Thanksgiving holiday to turn around on a short 3-day swing. It doesn't happen every week. In terms of the attendance and saturated market, I think that's a different discussion. But I'm not really feeling bad.
Bill, let me ask you a question though, and I respect what you're saying. I do. What's your favorite team?
The New York Giants.
Okay, you're a Giant fan. Do you conceivably believe that when the Giants, as a road team, have to go on the road to play a Thursday night game like they did on Thanksgiving night against the Redskins, do you really think that they were 100% at a competitive advantage, having very little practice time, very little recovery time, having to travel to go play a game on just such a short turnaround?
I don't think that but they're all in the same. You're absolutely correct in your statement. But every team has to do this. So it's
but again, the home team has more of an edge than the road team. That can't be disputed. They get an extra day of practice because they don't have to travel.
Right, but everybody's doing it though. It's not like it's just the Giants. Every team has to do this at some point.
No. But what I'm saying is, every team has to play a game, but not every team has to play a home game and a road game. It's just one game. So some teams are home, some teams are on the road. The Redskins, for example, on Thanksgiving, they were home. They got an extra day of practice more than the Giants did by virtue of not having to travel. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, if that's a short trip, you sneeze and go from Giant Stadium to
right. But my point is sometimes they're not that short though. The Houston Texans had to go on the road earlier this year and play. Who was it? Even Buffalo going to play the Jets. I mean, that's a plane ride. That means you don't get to practice ordinarily like you would. The Dolphins had to go play a game in Baltimore. That wasn't just a hop, skip, and a jump away, and Miami lost that game 40-0, if you remember. So it does put certain teams at a competitive disadvantage. It truly does.
Disagree with that. I'm just saying that, I'm not really overly sympathetic to the quick turnaround because they're all on the same playing field. You're absolutely correct. It probably does put them, they're tired, you don't have the recovery time, traveling, etc.
And Bill, thank you for the phone call. And look, I said it in the week after, and I wished I was wrong. Believe me, that Thursday night game in November that the Jets played against the Buffalo Bills, and they smoked them. Right? When the Jets were dancing around on the field, the defense and everything, I said, yeah, that was a good performance by the Jets, but that was also part and parcel because the Buffalo Bills were a road team on a short week, and they showed up to the stadium that night looking like they wanted no part of the game. No part of the game. And then the Jets probably got themselves a little bit of a false sense of security, and what did they do? They went down to Tampa Bay 10 days later and laid an egg. It's mixed messages from the NFL. You can't have it one way and say you want these guys to be safe and you're preaching recovery and all that stuff, and then you're going to send them out onto the field 3 days after they just play a game and putting them in harm's way. It doesn't make sense. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. It's ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Graca in for Stephen A. It's ESPN Radio. 866-729-3776. 866-ESPN. You can tweet at me, at Dan Graca, Graca, talking some NFL. RJ Bell going to join us. Coming up in hour number 2, go around the slate for a week number 14. You believe week 14 already? Boy, this goes quick. Let's say hi to David in Manhattan, who's on ESPN Radio. David, how are you?
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good, Dave. What's up?
Good. I totally agree with you about the oversaturation of Thursday night football. Sometimes I just have to be reminded that it's Thursday night and that there's a football game on, and I'm a huge NFL fan. But I think it's a product, even if they were to eliminate that game totally, I think it's also a product of our times. I don't know how old you are, Dan. I'm 44, so my peak of NFL fandom was, in the early 90s, mid-90s. And, I was a Dolphin fan. I am a Dolphin fan living in New York. And I couldn't wait to get my, this tacky subscription to Dolphin Digest, in the mail. But now, there's NFL.com. The Dolphins have a website. Every team has a website. There's NFL Network now. You can't. There's just too much of it around, And even if they were to eliminate that Thursday night game, people are sick of it. You could get what you want when you want it. You don't need to tune in anymore like you're some kind of crazed fan and make sure that you watch NFL Live on ESPN once a week. It's just oversaturation.
And now the other thing, too, is if, for instance, if you have another bye week like we've been suggesting, Dave, and I thank you for the phone call, my friend. We were talking about it during the break. A lot of people watch the Red Zone. Right, a lot of people now have the Sunday ticket with DirecTV, and you can flip and watch a bunch of games. Well, it's my job, but, I'm keeping my eye on everything. I'm trying to consume as much football as I possibly can on Sunday, not just, the locals, for example, like you did as a kid. Because remember, go back to before there was the Sunday ticket and satellite TV and everything, and certainly the internet, right? You were stuck with, unless you went out to a bar, you were stuck with the game that they were showing you on your local affiliate. That was it. So you maybe had 2 games, at the most 3, if there was a doubleheader in your town at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and that's all you saw. Now you have your pick of the litter. And it's great. I don't want to go back to the way it was, but there is that much more information for you to consume as an NFL fan. Juan in the Bronx up next. Juan, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Dan? Thank you for taking my call.
What's up, Juan?
All right, so basically, it's just amazing to me how people make this argument that because they make a lot of money, that is okay. Everybody's doing it, is okay. You're playing a sport that at any given moment, it could be the last time that you step on that field. When you're tired, your technique is not the same. You're just at a huge disadvantage. It's just, no matter the money, it doesn't matter. Like, none of those things matter. Like, you need to be rested. You need to be ready to go. And those Thursday night games, that they basically don't provide that for them.
It doesn't allow you to play your best. And again, I'm not trying to make excuses, and none of these teams are going to make excuses too, but you cannot tell me, and you can give me charts, graphs, statistics, whatever. I am not going to believe that a team, especially on the road, that has to travel to go play a Thursday night game has a competitive advantage or even the equal advantage as opposed to another team. It just doesn't compute to me. It does not.
Forget winning and losing. It goes back to the player safety. It's just the hypocrisy. Like, it's just crazy.
That's all it is. But you know something, Juan? And I thank you for the phone call. You know it and I know it. Green makes the world go round, and it certainly makes this league go round. Because all the decisions that have been made, certainly with this commissioner in power over the last decade, have been motivated by one thing and one thing only: money. Not for the good of the game, not for the good of the athlete, not for the well-being of the player or the fan. How about that? The consumer, you, me. How do we make the most money? That trumps even common sense sometimes. Peter, you're on ESPN Radio. What's going on, Pete?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, Pete.
I just wanted to make a couple of points, and maybe you have more information. But I guess all the studies that I've been hearing, and coincidentally, actually this morning, all the studies show, contrary to what you're saying, that there actually isn't a higher incidence of injury on Thursday night games as opposed to any other regular scheduled games on Sundays, for example, or on Monday nights. Mike Golick, Stefania Bell, the Players Association, which is obviously the agency charged with protecting its players, all of these studies, the NFL's commission study, all of the studies say the same thing. So I guess I'm not exactly certain what studies you're referencing, but all the studies that Peter have pointed in the other direction.
Well, Peter, here's the thing. Peter, let me stop you because we got to hit a break here, and I thank you for checking in today. All right, and I respect Mike Golick. I respect Stefania Bell, and they can have their own opinion just like I can. I'm going to refer back to the studies, and it's not even a study. How many players who are current players in the NFL, currently, step between those white lines right now, not 20 years ago, right now, okay, and tell you each and every week how they're at a disadvantage by playing on Thursday night and how much of a risk it is and how it leaves them more vulnerable by playing on Thursday nights. That's what I'm referring to. And I'll take their word over anybody who may have played the game, may have not played the game. The guys who are doing it right now, that's what I chalk it up to. Hour 2 next. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. It's ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.
ZipRecruiter, I don't know if any of y'all have ever heard about it, so I'm just going to read it to you. It's a must-have. With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. So you can rest easy knowing your job is being seen by the right candidates, okay? ZipRecruiter puts its smart matching technology to work, actively notifying qualified candidates about your job within minutes of posting so you receive the best possible matches. That's why our ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you. It finds them. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. One more time to try for free to go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. It's something you need to know. Because right now my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A.
Guys, wouldn't your wife or girlfriend love it if you treated her to the very best this Christmas? Now you can, with the world's softest pajamas by Pajamagram. Created by a team of pajama experts, the world's softest PJs are lighter than a cloud, softer than a bunny, like cashmere, only better. She'll love how heavenly they feel. Includes free gift packaging and Christmas delivery is guaranteed. So visit pajamagram.com or call 1-800-GIVE-PJs.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Busy Sports Friday. Dan Graca sitting in for Stephen A. 866-729-3776 telephone number, 866-ESPN. You can tweet at me at Dan Graca, Graca. We'll talk to RJ Bell, our man from Vegas, coming up here in just a short while. Go over the lines for Week 14, and I'm sure there's a lot of hitting points we're going to touch on with him. We'll get into a little bit baseball and the Giancarlo Stanton sweepstakes. Where is that going to land? And Yankees set to be in on it, Dodgers set to be in on it, and the Cubbies, the Astros, those are the final four for Stanton. So we'll give you some thoughts on that, too, before we say goodbye. Let's say hi to Ryan in Bud Lake. Ryan, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Good. How are you, Dan?
Good, Ryan. What's going on?
Man, as a lifelong, now I'm a football fanatic.
Yeah.
I would watch football every Sunday from start to finish. If I have nothing to do, that's where I'm at. But I do have real concerns about the league. I mean, the Thursday night games, you hear what the players are saying. You see the quality of play. I mean, there's just no reason that you can justify this when all you talk about is player safety. And then you're running these guys out there 4 days after another game. I mean, I played sports. I'm sure you've played sports. Mm-hmm. You know 1 or 2 extra days makes a huge difference in how your body feels going into the next game. And as far as Goodell getting a 5-year extension, I mean, they say the numbers are up, they're making more money, you know, everything financially is good. But you got to take into account the population is growing. There's more eyes to view. It's not a matter of are they making more money. It's are they making as much money as they could if they were doing things a better way. I mean, you see these suspensions come down. There's no parity between what one guy gets and what the next guy gets. Nobody knows what the rules are. Every decision he's made has been questionable. I mean, if it wasn't for fantasy football, I think the NFL would be in much bigger trouble.
Ryan, that's a big part of it, too. Fantasy's a big part. And, Ryan, good phone call by you, my friend. I'll tell you this, too. You can look back on every misstep that the NFL has had over the last handful of years or so. And, look, especially when we got to the player discipline stuff, the off-the-field problems with some of these athletes and how it's been handled by the league. I mean, it seems like one PR nightmare after another for the way that which it was handled. And just to give you a little bit of an inclination, the position of power and the position of strength that the National Football League was operating from at the outset of all this, we can universally agree that they were just god-awful in how they handled things. But yet here you have a league still bringing in, what did we say yesterday, $13 billion a year in annual revenue in 2016. Head and shoulders above all the other major sports. Okay, and the popularity is supposed to have diminished. Right? And they've got hit with a few right crosses here and there. Right? They have been destroyed through the media. And that's what they're still bringing in. Because they were through the roof. They were a superpower. Their popularity couldn't be rivaled. And what did I say? Right? You can look down on the league. You can criticize the league. But the league always falls back to Sunday at 1 o'clock. Right? The league always has those games to revert back to. You're going to be there. I'm going to be there because we want the games. The product still is going to sell itself. Product might not be as good as it used to be, but it's still there. And it's unmatched. Whether you like it or not, whether you want to admit it or not. That's a fact. But eventually that's got to give way a little bit, don't you think? Eventually when the next TV contracts are up and the league sits down with, all of their network partners, and they say, we want such and such and such, some of them might say, well, okay, yeah, we know it's important. We know that it's still going to be watched by a lot of people, maybe more so than the average television program, but you're not at where you used to be. So why should I write you a check as big as the one that I just wrote you for the last contract? Why does that make any sense? Are some of these networks Going to play hardball with the NFL? I'm sure there's always going to be somebody receptive to want to get in on the action because it's still the NFL. It's still super popular, just not as popular as it used to be. Leaf, you're on ESPN Radio. What's going on, Leaf?
Hi, Dan.
Leaf, what's going on? How are you?
I have to disagree with everybody how they're talking about Thursday night. The games are, fatiguing the players because from a military standpoint, a veteran, I do PT like Monday through Friday, and sometimes I'm not giving 100% like I would, but I know I signed up for it, and that's what they did. They signed a contract. That's what they got to do.
In terms of playing on Thursday night, you're saying?
Exactly. That's what it's pertaining to because, we get a lot of, body wear and tear just like football players do. And I believe you sign the contract, you should, do what you're told. If you got to play Thursday, be a man and play Thursday.
But you got to remember one other thing, though, Leaf, and I hear what you're saying, honor your contract, and that's all well and good, and that's been thrown out there a lot, but has there always been Thursday night football? That's the question. See, it's one thing if you say, I don't want to play on Sundays or Sundays too much. Well, that's when the games are. But there hasn't always been Thursday night football. Remember, it's for a while they only played Thursday night football in the second half of the season, maybe like the last 7 or 8 weeks. They started in November, and that was okay. But each and every week from the get-go, week 1 all the way to week 16, that's a lot. And it didn't always used to be like that. So it's easy to say, play your contract and honor what's in there, but it didn't always be that way.
I hear you, Dan, and I understand what you're saying, too. But, I see two sides to the coin there. It's going to be biased for some teams then, and then, some still are going to have to play at least a couple of those Thursday games if they dim it down. They got to spread the love, I guess.
Yeah, it's Leaf, I thank you for the call. It's still a problem that needs to be fixed. It's a problem that needs to be fixed. I was a little distracted there because we got some breaking news. The Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes is now over. His agency, CAA, has announced that the winner for the Japanese superstar is none other than the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. How about that? So Shohei Ohtani going to the Angels, where he's going to share the same lineup as Mike Trout, who's arguably the best player in baseball, a future Hall of Famer in Albert Pujols, among others. So Ohtani going to the Angels, and if you want to maybe put a little 2 and 2 together and a little bit of a link as to why he would choose the Angels, remember something. Billy Epler, who was the general manager of the Halos, he previously served under Brian Cashman with the Yankees as the assistant GM when the Yankees successfully recruited and signed Masahiro Tanaka. So there is already the experience of what it takes to get a Japanese star over to the big leagues, have him sign with your club. And Billy Epler worked his magic again, and whatever he was selling to Ohtani in his camp, it seemed to work. And we didn't know what to make of Ohtani, what he wanted, what was going to be important to him, but I guess he saw fit in sunny Southern California. So Ohtani going to the Angels, and now let the questions begin. We know that the Angels can use a frontline starting pitcher more than anything else. I mean, if you asked anybody, and what's been the Angels' Achilles heel for the last few years, it's been starting pitching. And I know Ohtani wants to come in and be a pitcher. He also wants to swing the bat. Maybe you work him in as a designated hitter every so often. And he's been a DH exclusively for the last few years in Japan in terms of playing didn't play the field much. It's been a DH. So now he gets to do it in L.A. with the Angels. Wow, I'm a little surprised. So many questions abound. Is this going to be more bark than bite? Everybody will tell you he's got the potential to be a frontline starting pitcher, like a number 1 or a number 2. Do the Angels now go to a 6-man rotation just to suit Ohtani? Do they ease him in slowly? This is real. I'm surprised. I got to be honest with you. I really thought that all signs were pointing towards the Seattle Mariners because in the trade that the Mariners made yesterday in getting D. Gordon from the Miami Marlins, in addition to picking up Gordon, Seattle also acquired an extra $1 million from Derek Jeter and the Marlins in international signing bonus money, which now puts Seattle ahead of the pack in terms of what they could offer him in terms of the signing bonus. Remember, the Angels weren't in the top 3 for what they could give Ohtani in terms of a signing bonus. That was the Rangers, the Twins, and the Yankees. But he picks the Angels nonetheless. I guess he's a big Mike Trout fan. I don't know. But that is a head-scratcher. Ohtani to the Angels. How about that? Now, I don't know, and I'd love to hear from some Angel fans. I mean, we're on in L.A. Tell me, 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Is he enough of a star? Is there enough hype already attached to this guy where you're going to run to the stadium and buy tickets? You're going to go online right now and start dialing up and making sure I get me some Angels tickets for opening day because I got to see Ohtani? I have to be there when he makes his first start at Angel Stadium? I don't know. I'd love to find out, though. CB in Pasadena. You're on ESPN Radio. CB, how are you?
Hey, Dan. All right. How you doing now? Now, come now. You know, to reiterate on your conversation about Thursday night football, can you just imagine when we get into that lull as sports fans, when basketball is over, baseball is just starting, and we do not have any football? I think that it is ludicrous, preposterous, and blasphemous to not have football on Thursday. I love it. There's a plethora of good games. I know.
Where are the good games? Where are the good games? Yeah. Where are the good games? Last night was the exception.
Then you got the Rams with a dinner-sized menu of plays that are fun to watch. What's going to be on there on Thursday? I guarantee you next year they're going to be a market media machine. And then also with Wade Phillips
CB, everybody's got to play a Thursday night game, and I thank you for the phone call, but you can't tell me that they're all good games. More often than not. Last night was a rarity. Next week, you tell me Broncos-Colts, who's going to be tripping over themselves to make sure they're in front of the TV to watch that game. That's a disgrace. We'll talk more football with R.J. Bell coming up next. It's Dan Graca in for Stephen A. It's ESPN Radio.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Dan Graca in for Stephen A. today. It's ESPN Radio. 866-ESPN is the telephone number. As we do it each and every Friday, we check in with our man. He is, of course, the founder of pregame.com. And what's pregame.com? You know what it is. It's the exclusive odds provider to the Associated Press. He is the one and only R.J. Bell. R.J., Dan Graca, good to talk to you, man. How are you?
Hey, Dan, how are you? I love the Stones bringing me in. That's setting the right tone for this segment.
Hey, they're spinning them today. That's all I got to say. They're hitting home run. They're hitting them out of the park. We even had Rob Thomas for crying out loud. So we're all over the map today. But let me start with this before we get into the games, though, for this weekend. There's a lot of goodies, of course. But what's the latest when looking at sports legalization here, betting that is, in the state of New Jersey, for example? It seems like that is getting closer and closer to reality, right?
Yeah, I think you might be underselling it. After Monday, there was the oral arguments with the Supreme Court. I talked to 3 different guys that were insiders, guys you would think would have a good idea. One said 90% chance Jersey wins. One said 95%. One said 99%. Everyone's over 90%. I had, and I can't mention the league, but I had a meeting with a few others with one of the major leagues talking about how to make sure or maximize the chance that there's not corruption, right? So game integrity. And this fellow was talking about gambling like it was a foregone conclusion, like we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So to me, it feels like the leagues at minimum are acquiescing. They're accepting this. I feel like 90+% that by next football, you're going to see it in New Jersey, probably Pennsylvania, probably California.
And there's been commissioners who've already gone on the record. I mean, look at Adam Silver and what he said about the NBA, where he's for the gambling and he's for sports betting and such. And because it's such a steamrolling train at this point, it's impossible to slow down. I mean, everybody knows that it's going on.
I think what Adam Silver saw, and give him a ton of credit, is if you get involved with daily fantasy in any kind of, to any degree, it's too hypocritical to say, well, that's okay, but betting on the teams is bad, right? If you stay away from daily fantasy, you could still say it. But with all the leagues, it would seem, seeing the money that could be made from daily fantasy, I think the hypocrisy was just too much. And then you look at the NFL and the Oakland Raiders, potentially likely in Las Vegas. I think that's another domino.
Let's start with some of these games here, because we got a lot of them here for Week 14 on Sunday here. And we'll start with the locals with the Jets. They're actually favored by a point going into Denver. And the funny thing about that is that Denver was favored in Miami last week. We know that didn't work out that well. And now they're an underdog at home to the Jets. Are you buying that?
No, I think it's too much. I think the public finally realized how bad this Denver team is. And if you look at that change from Denver being favored in Miami to being a home dog against the Jets, it's just too much adjustment. By the way, Denver, though, 8 straight losses. Everybody knows that. Yeah. 8 straight against the spread. Most people know that. But they've lost against the spread by 120 points in those 8 games. Jeez. So they're not even close. That said, the Jets favored. It's a little expensive, so I would lean Jets, but I'm staying away.
And the only problem with the Broncos is, let's face it, RJ, the best quarterback in the organization is the guy who wears the suit and sits up in the office.
You think still? I mean, it might be close. Simeon is supposed to be the best of the 3. If you look at the advanced sabermetrics, he was the worst quarterback in the NFL last week.
Yeah, I'll still take my chances with Elway, even at age 50 or whatever he is, 55. I still think he could go out there and sling it. How about the Giants? We know that Eli is back as the starting quarterback. They welcome in the Pokes, big division rivalry there. But Giants, 3.5-point dog here. That surprise you?
No, because it opened 5.5, and there's been a lot of Giants money. I see the reason for that, down to 3.5. Imagine this, Dan. Imagine you got treated with disrespect at ESPN.
Me never.
Now imagine, all right? Imagine. And then imagine by the next week, the guy who did that is fired, and his boss is fired for hiring the guy who treated you with disrespect. How great would you feel?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, I think Eli and the team has to feel very empowered right now. And when you have a team with such a bad record, motivation is the key. Why are they going to play hard? I think there's reasons that the Giants play hard here, not to mention it's a bitter rival with the Cowboys. Here's why, though, I don't like the Giants. I think there's a lot of Dallas advantages here. Sean Lee is back. He's one of the most valuable defensive players in the NFL, and Dallas should be able to run the ball. Giants D is last against the run in the NFL. So I think there's some reasons to bet the Giants. I think there's some reasons to bet the Cowboys. That means I'm going to pass the game.
You know, Jacksonville is playing host to the Seattle Seahawks, and there weren't too many times, RJ, certainly in the last several years, where the Jaguars would have been favored against the Seahawks. But as you know, it's a new season, and these teams are certainly different. But the Jags are a 2.5-point favorite here at home against the Hawks. Is this maybe showing a little bit of disrespect to Russell Wilson and company?
I don't think so. I think that the fact you're asking that question, and in the back room of your show, there was guys saying, hey, I like Seattle. Now, listen, I'm not one to cast aspersions.
Right.
But Seattle is very square here. The sharp side is Jacksonville, and here's why. The average fan is going to look and say, wait a minute, Seattle's good. I just saw them win against Philadelphia. That Russell Wilson might be the MVP. But are we really saying Seattle is a superior team on the season to this Jacksonville team? If you look at the stats, if you look at the records, it doesn't make sense. And with the line only being 2.5, you'd have to think Seattle is clearly the better team to take 2.5 when the game is in Jacksonville. And remember one thing about Jacksonville. They have one of the best defensive lines, but they have the deepest defensive line for sure in the NFL. So typically Russell Wilson will make the defense get tired chasing him. I think the rotation of Jacksonville keeps him fresh, and I think that's a big advantage for the Jags.
You know, the Vikings are playing their 3rd straight road game this week, and they're going to travel to Carolina, but it's the Panthers who are getting 2.5 in this one.
Yeah, this is pure value on Carolina. You can bet in Vegas a week ahead of time. So this game, Minnesota-Carolina, you could have bet last week. The line at that point was Carolina at home favored by 2.5. Now Carolina is a 2.5-point underdog. That's just too much adjustment. What's changed since last week is only Carolina didn't look real good last week. But are we going to overreact to one game? So there's no doubt Carolina has the value. Here's why I don't love Carolina, though, is if you actually look at the history, the last 2 times Minnesota's played Carolina, they've sacked Cam Newton 14 times in 2 games. He had one of his worst games last year against Minnesota. So I think schematically, the coach and that staff has something good against Carolina. So that keeps me away from Carolina, even though the value purely by a point spread perspective is on Carolina.
This one jumps out to me right off the page here, and the Browns, who are winless and could be heading to 0-16, RJ, let's face it. They're taking on the Green Bay Packers, and I know that it's not Aaron Rodgers, it's still Brett Hundley, but Packers only favored by 3.5?
Well, I don't think it's only. Remember, here's an interesting method to get a sense of road favorites. Flip the line by 6 points, give 6 points to the road team, and assume they're at home. So if Green Bay were at home, they'd be a 9.5-point favorite against the Browns. Now, with Hundley at quarterback, quite frankly, a guy that passed for 84 yards last week, do you really think the Packers should be laying 9.5 if they were home?
Not 9.5, I wouldn't know.
Well, so at 3.5 on the road is pretty much the same. And that's a great way to kind of get yourself a little perspective on these short road favorites. I actually like the Browns here. Now, I'm not going to bet them. And let me tell you, you know how like with guys that work out, they'll be like, oh, that guy, he gets up at 5:30 in the morning. He'll work out if he has an early flight. Like there's that next level of dedication. Well, with bettors in Vegas, the professionals, the hardcore question is, are you still willing to bet the Browns? Because they've lost so much money to so many people when they've looked like the right side. Remember, against Jacksonville, they were getting 8 points, and they were only down 6 with like a minute left, and they had the ball, and they gave it away with a fumble return touchdown. By the way, I had the Browns in that game. I have yet to recover. So I think all the pros, or most of them, are on the Browns. I'm going to sit this one out, though.
The Eagles, check them out, RJ. They're making camp out on the West Coast because, of course, they played the Hawks last Sunday night. Now they're going to travel down the coast, and they're going to take on the Rams. And you talk about a statement game, I think, for both of these teams. And the Rams, that one favored by 2.5. How do you see that shaking out?
You know, a lot of these games I've said, well, you could go this way, you could go that way, because most games are pretty close to the right number. I really like the Eagles here. This is one of my better bets of the week. I've bet this game, and this is a pros versus Joes. The Joes are looking at the Rams and saying, oh, man, they're really good, and Philadelphia just got beat last week, so I'm going with the Rams. The pros are saying, if you look at the season, Philadelphia is clearly the better team. Them staying out west after a loss is like a quasi-training camp. I think you're going to see a really focused Eagles team. Eagles travel with their fans better than or as good as any team in the league. So I expect 30-40% of the stadium to be Eagles fans. That's what I'm hearing from guys I know in L.A. And lastly, if you actually look at it, I think it's a situation where these fires, and obviously there's a human reality to that, but looking at the games, how can these players not be distracted somewhat with their family, with their kids in school, all the different complications? You add it all up, I think the Eagles plus 2.5, one of the better bets of the week.
RJ Bell, our guest here on ESPN Radio, doing a great job, of course, with the lines here for Week 14. RJ, maybe the most physical of the rivalries in all the National Football League. You'll see it Sunday night with the Steelers and the Ravens. I guess the question I have is this. How much did Monday night's game, emotionally, physically, everything that went into it, how much did that take a toll on this Steelers team who were favored by 4.5 here hosting their rival Ravens?
I think that is the million-dollar question, because if it has not taken a big toll, this line makes no sense, because Pittsburgh is clearly the better team. Pittsburgh's at home. This line opened up 7.5. So before the Monday night game, Pittsburgh was over a touchdown favorite. Now only 4.5. Now, Shazier's worth something on the field, but I mean, a half a point is probably being generous. Schuster is not even worth that. I mean, he's the second or third receiver based on how you want to look at it. So I think the idea of a physical game followed by another physical game is somewhat of a factor. But I think if anything, Pittsburgh is going to rally around Shazier's absence, his health issues, his injury. And I think only being favored by 4.5 is really offering the Steelers value. Now, remember, lastly, Pittsburgh plays New England next week. You think they might be looking ahead, but Pittsburgh does not look ahead against Baltimore.
Exactly. Any other opponent, I think they might have got caught napping, like you said, but they're certainly not gonna with the Ravens. RJ Bell, our man from pregame.com, outstanding job by you as always. Enjoy that game or those games this weekend, my friend. We'll catch up next week.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, RJ Bell, 866, say ESPN is the telephone number, 866-729-3776. It's Dan Graca in for Stephen A. on the top of the hour here on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Dan Graca in for Stephen A. We're going to the top of the hour here on ESPN Radio. 866-say-ESPN, 866-729-3776 is the telephone number. Thanks again to RJ Bell, doing a great job, like he always does, founder, of course, of pregame.com, going over some of these lines. And you got a lot of great games this week. You really do. You know, it's not Thursday Night Footballs, we know that, but you got a lot of interesting matchups. And remember, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. Right? We're down to the last 4 weeks of the season, certainly. I mean, each and every game counts in the NFL, but even more so now because you don't have that much of an opportunity to make up for maybe a slump or a 2-game losing streak, and this is it. I mean, next week already, when we get into Week 15, we already have a couple of games on Saturdays, which you really could tell you're at the end of the finish line or nearing it when those couple Saturday games show up on the schedule, which are always fun. See, I'll take the Saturday games. Love that. That, to me, is night and day different than Thursday Night Football. Don't even get me started on that. Mo in San Diego. Mo, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you? Mo, you there? Mo going once. Let's move on from Mo. Dennis in Queens. Dennis, you're on ESPN Radio.
Yeah, how you doing? I have 2 points. One is about Drew Brees. Yeah. Thursday night didn't make you throw that pick or make Kamara get a concussion, so just shut up, okay? And second point is, everyone talks about what's wrong with the NFL. It's basically the owners. I mean, and there's an angle about the kneeling that I think no one talks about enough, and that maybe the owners have stock in private prisons. Maybe they own bail bonds companies. Maybe there's an angle where the reason they're so against the protest is not, they're patriotic because it might affect their money, not NFL money, but their outside businesses.
Yeah, but see, Dennis, here's the thing, though. See, Dennis, I don't want to go in that direction, I'll be honest with you, and I thank you for the call, because I don't think that has anything to do with the way the game is played. It's got nothing to do with the way it's played, and that's what we're talking about, the actual on-field product. It's got nothing to do with the national anthem. It's got nothing to do with kneeling. It's got nothing to do with any of that stuff. You know, and that's really overthinking things. If you think that the owners have stakes in prisons, I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. It's got nothing to do with the way these guys go out there and play on the football field. None. I mean, all that other stuff is more about how the public is going to receive it. But it doesn't affect the game. Once they kick that ball into the air and once the ref blows the whistle, clock starts, all that stuff is forgotten. It's over with. And there is a legitimate case that you can make that the product you're getting, at least on Thursday nights, is not as good as it should be. And Drew Brees, you could sit here and say, oh, well, you know what, Drew Brees is belly aching. Well, guess what? He's not the only one. He's not the only one, because you hear it all year long. And all the teams have to do it. And all the players are going to tell you. It's the same exact thing. And it's not him being a sore loser. It's legit. Because none of these guys want to do it. And it's not even the players. The coaches will tell you the same thing, too. Coaches don't like it. It compromises their ability to get a team ready to play. Different things they maybe want to install, different packages, different schemes, whatnot. For that, you only have X amount of hours in a day to be able to get stuff done. Fidel in L.A., you're on ESPN Radio. Fidel, how are you?
I'm doing good, Dan. How about yourself?
What's up, Fidel?
Hey, I usually call about basketball, but this was just too enticing. It's really crazy to me that people are disagreeing with you about this whole Thursday Night Football thing. Like that guy Bill calling in talking about, well, they get paid handsomely, so I guess they deserve to get concussed. Or the guy Leaf saying that, they signed a contract. something to me tells me that the NFL didn't give them the percentages on a Thursday night football and saying, you might get way more injured playing these games as opposed to Sunday night football. And also him saying that, there are more injuries on Sunday, or there's no proof that there's more injuries on a Thursday night football than a Sunday night football game, which is it's ridiculous to me because obviously there's less games being played on a Thursday night than a Sunday night. So yes, there's a higher accumulation of injuries on a Sunday night than on Thursday. And you don't really have to argue statistics with people. It's like common sense.
Common sense.
Saying, oh, well, where are the statistics? 3 days versus 6 days of rest it's obvious. It's like, I can't believe that this isn't even an argument. It's basic math.
I mean, you can listen to teams that win games on Thursday, right? And they'll tell you basically the stock answer is, yeah, boy, it was a difficult assignment getting ready to play on Thursday, but I'm glad we won under difficult circumstances, but I'm just glad we got out of here with a win, and now we have, a week and a half to rest or whatever. But doesn't mean they like doing it. It doesn't mean that they want to sign up and do it again the next week. It's like, all right, we dodged the bullet, get out of here, and we got to win. That's all it is, but it's not something that they're, advocating for. But as I said yesterday when we were doing the show, when you look at the collective bargaining agreement and you look at what the players agreed to, all right, they decided to sacrifice all these other things. Not sacrifice, they were given a choice. They want the most money possible, and they're entitled to it. But if they want to get the most money, then the league is going to make them do things like play on Thursdays. Right? It's going to make Roger Goodell have that much more power when it comes to discipline and authority. But the players get a little extra chunk of change because that to them trumps everything else. Now, we'll see what happens in 2021 if they want to look at it a little bit differently. But I still think the owners are always going to have the upper hand when it comes to determining what's right, what's wrong, and what's going to stand when you're talking about the NFL and how it's legislated. We have a statement from CAA, the agency from Shohei Ohtani, who, if you're just joining us, ended the sweepstakes and decided to pick the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim to be his baseball home in the major leagues. We'll give that to you, plus we'll tie up some loose ends as far as Giancarlo Stanton is concerned as well. It's Dan Graca till the top of the hour, in for Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Couple more minutes till the top of the hour. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. here on ESPN Radio, 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. We haven't even done any NBA yet today, but there was a fairly noteworthy trade that went down yesterday. The Brooklyn Nets continue to add the top 5 picks from, the 2015 draft, the 2014 draft, whatever it was. They already have D'Angelo Russell. Now Jahlil Okafor coming over from Philadelphia with Nick Stauskas to Brooklyn. They won't join the team in Mexico City where they're playing a couple of games. They beat Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony down in Mexico City last night. Came from behind double digits to do so as OKC continues their problems. Who would have thought? And I understand that there's a learning curve and an adjustment, especially when you're dealing with, that type of talent and then learning how to play off of one another and sharing the basketball and that sort of thing. But did anybody in their wildest dreams think the Oklahoma City Thunder would be 2 games under 500? Virtually 25 games into the season. I don't think anybody could have seen that happening. Now, am I going to sit here and be so bold and think that the Thunder are going to miss out on the playoffs this year? No, I think they'll find a way to at least squeak in because the way the Western Conference is right now, probably 500 or thereabouts will find a way, I think, to get you either the 7th or 8th spot. And I think eventually they're going to get their act together at some point. Nets, on the other hand, though, look, I really don't think that there's anything to lose by taking a chance on Okafor. I really don't, because here's what it boils down to. All right, remember, he's going to be a free agent here. So essentially what the Nets have to gain over the next 5 months is an audition for a guy to see if, all right, is he going to be part of our future plans or not? If you figure that, all right, we don't think that he's going to be one of our core pieces, fine, you let him go, and then you let him walk at the end of the year. Now, we know that his stock has plummeted the last couple of seasons. Right? Tremendously. Had himself a really, really solid rookie season on a god-awful Sixers team, but he got caught up being one of the victims of the process in Philadelphia. And nobody's going to argue right now that the process hasn't worked out. It has. Right? Look at what it's gotten them. Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and clearly those two guys now are the face of the franchise. And if you're Okafor, you kind of got lost in a numbers game more than anything else. You know, he's in the doghouse right now. And the problem with Jahlil Okafor is, I don't know if he's necessarily suited to be a big-time player in today's NBA. What I mean by that is he's really a conventional, old-school, back-to-the-basket type big. And those guys are few and far between now, right, in the NBA. Guys like Jahlil Okafor, they're like the equivalent to VHS tapes. Like, you don't see many of them anymore. It's hard to find one. And those guys generally don't have a long life in terms of being ultra-successful in the league. I mean, there's, I guess, a place for them. But you could see bigs who play with their back to the basket, but unless they're able to stop or to step out and drain threes and to maybe hit some shots from the perimeter like Karl Anthony Towns, even a Brook Lopez, for example, you know, that's what the big man is now in the NBA. And the league is drafted on super athletic wings, right? That's what the NBA is now. You look at any of the marquee players in this sport, it's getting the wing guy. That's who you want. That's who you want to build your team around. And if you look at the Nets, you know, that's one little avenue that you can maybe criticize them and saying, all right, well, you're going to actually go and get Jahlil Okafor, but where's that big wing, right? Where's that go-to guy who's just going to wreak havoc on both ends of the floor and who's going to be a matchup nightmare for opposing teams? I mean, Jahlil Okafor is just not that guy. And he really doesn't show a lot of inclination to even attack the glass and to rebound. And I'll just say it bluntly. When it comes to the defensive end of the floor, I wouldn't trust him to guard a parked car. I'll take the parked car. He can't guard anybody. So, like I said, it's a small risk. They didn't have to give up a lot. And we'll see over the next 5 months or however it is this season if he's going to prove himself to be a big enough piece for him. I mean, on paper, it would have looked great. A few years ago, if you would have told the Nets, like, oh, yeah, you're going to get Russell, you're going to get Jahlil Okafor. They say, great, but we've seen these guys' careers and how they've unfolded. And Russell, there's still a lot to be answered to, and he's currently on the shelf with an injury, and who knows when he's going to be back. But he still has a lot of growing and a lot of maturing to do. And it goes back to the argument again. When you have these guys who are one-and-dones and who have such a small sample of basketball in college and come to the NBA as teenagers, they have a lot of growing to do, physically, mentally, emotionally, you name it. And it really is a mixed bag. Want to give thanks to RJ Bell for hopping on today. Thanks to John, to Nuno, to Kat, everybody that chipped in the last few days. I will catch you soon. Steve and I will be back on Monday. We'll talk to you. Enjoy your weekend here on ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.